Welcome back to my desk where I enjoy uncovering hidden and also controversial texts that, in my opinion, could have shaped Christianity as we know it. I'm Dr. Dandridge, professor of religion at Clark Atlanta University, and I want to ask you a question. What if we found ancient biblical texts that challenge what we knew about the Bible? Well, we did. See, today we're talking about the Dead Sea Scrolls, over 900 ancient manuscripts discovered inside of the caves near the Dead Sea. I've actually been to see these caves on three occasions, and they contain some of the oldest copies of the biblical text that we've ever seen. But here's the real controversy. The first thing is that these scrolls contain missing pieces of the Bible that could ultimately change how we understand it. Some scholars also believe that they challenge Christian doctrine as we know it today. And there's even speculation that certain religious groups, after we found these scrolls, wanted to suppress their findings. So, what do these scrolls actually say? We're going to look at it today. And more importantly, why do they matter to you? But before we dig in, do me a favor, take a second, subscribe, because trust me, you don't want to miss the other revelations that I give inside of these conversations. So let's dive right in. Let's rewind to 1947. A Bedouin shepherd is looking for his lost goat in the Judean desert when he stumbles upon a cave filled with ancient scrolls stored in clay jars. Over the next decade, archaeologists uncover over 900 manuscripts in 11 different caves, dating back as far as 200 BCE, making them the oldest known copies of the Hebrew Bible. But here's the crazy part. These weren't just biblical texts. The scrolls contained every book of the Hebrew Bible except Esther, lost religious texts that never made it into the Bible, apocalyptic prophecies predicting the end of the world, and even secretive writings about a group known as the Essenes, which was this radical Jewish sect. And here's where things get really interesting. Among these scrolls are passages that differ from the Bible we have today. So, did the Bible change over time? And if so, what does that mean for how we read Scripture today? Now let's talk about why the Dead Sea Scrolls are so controversial. There are three things I want us to consider. Number one, they reveal alternative versions of the Bible. See, some passages inside of the scrolls don't match the versions of the Old Testament that we have today. For example, the book of 1 Samuel inside of the Dead Sea Scrolls is longer than the version inside of most Bibles today. Secondly, they hint at an apocalyptic end times movement. See, the scrolls talk about a coming, quote unquote, war of the sons of light and sons of darkness. Some scholars believe this could be the real worldview of Jewish groups during Jesus' time, suggesting Jesus may have been influenced by apocalyptic teachings. Thirdly, they describe a hidden messianic figure. One scroll describes two messiahs, one as a king and one as a priest. This challenges the Christian view of Jesus as the only Messiah. And here's the big question. If the Dead Sea Scrolls had been discovered earlier, would Christianity look different today? Let's break down 5 of the most mind-blowing passages found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. The first is considered to be the Great Isaiah Scroll. This scroll contains an almost complete version of the book of Isaiah, dating back around 125 BCE. The amazing part? It's nearly identical to modern versions, proving that the Bible has been preserved for over 2,000 years. Then we have the War Scroll. This text describes a massive apocalyptic battle between the sons of light and the sons of darkness. Some scholars believe early Christians borrowed ideas from this when talking about the battle between good and evil inside of the book of Revelation. Then you have the Temple Scroll. This scroll details blueprints for the perfect temple, far grander than Solomon's temple inside of the Bible. Some think this might have been a vision for a third temple that would be built during the end times. Fourthly, you have the Messianic Apocalypse. This text predicts that a future Messiah will heal the sick, raise the dead, and bring justice. Sound familiar? It's eerily similar to the way Jesus is described inside of the Gospels. Finally, but not totally, you then have the Copper Scroll. Unlike the other scrolls, this one is made of copper and it's not religious. It's actually a treasure map. It describes hidden caches of gold and silver buried around Israel. To this day, no one has found the treasure. Or have they? So what do these passages tell us? Could they reveal a hidden history of faith that we were never meant to see? If we take the Dead Sea Scrolls seriously, here's what they can teach us. Number one, the Bible was not written in one moment. It evolved over time. Some biblical texts were longer, some were shorter, and different Jewish communities had different versions of Scripture, and the Dead Sea Scrolls prove this to us. Number two, ancient Jews were expecting a Messiah, but not necessarily Jesus. Some believed in two Messiahs, a kingly one and a priestly one. This raises the question, did early Christians reshape messianic expectations in order to fit Jesus? That's something we can talk about. Thirdly, and lastly, the early church may have borrowed ideas from the group that I talked about earlier, the Essenes. The Essenes, which was the group believed to have written these scrolls, practiced baptism, communal living, and apocalyptic prophecy, all things that appear later in Christianity. But here's the big question. Did the Essenes influence Jesus and his movement? That's something to think about it. So now that we've looked at the Dead Sea Scrolls, let me ask you, do they strengthen your faith by proving the Bible's reliability? Or do they raise more questions about how Scripture has been shaped over time? I want to hear from you. Drop a comment, send a message, or even better, share this episode with someone who loves diving into biblical mysteries. And before you go, make sure you subscribe because next time we're tackling another topic that could redefine what you thought you knew about Christianity. Until then, this is Dr. Dandridge, and thank you for joining me at my desk. See you next time.